just as I go to film, it starts pouring rain. So, ambience. Hey all, it's Starzy, and today we are going to be doing that mid-year book tag that everyone does. Nathan is playing D&D in the other room, and you are probably going to hear him, but that's just what we have to deal with. Working full-time now, and we can only film on the weekends. I know that my little sibling does sometimes watch my videos. Your mug was the only one that was left clean in the cupboard, so I am W for Willow today. Basically, we're going to be going through some questions related to books that I've read or acquired in the first half of the year. Best, worst, all of that kind of stuff. And yeah, it'll be a bit of a review to then compare at the end of the year. In terms of the amount of books that I've read in the first half of the year, I have read, I think, 48 books, which is quite a large number really, so I don't know whether we'll keep that up for the second half, but there's a number for you. And I didn't end up, I kind of wanted to, but I didn't end up getting all my statistics and stuff like that. But in terms of the genres that I would have to that I've read the most of this year, if I had to take a stab at it, it's probably fantasy and romance. And yeah, so that's what we're working with. I kind of read all over the place, but those are probably the genres I've read the most of in the first half of 2021. I don't think there's anything else in particular I need to add on. Before we just get straight on into these questions, we'll say I'm currently in lockdown again, so I went a little overboard with my makeup today because what's my explanation? I don't know. I was having fun experimenting with makeup because it's not like I can go anywhere. I've left my house once in the past week and a half, and it was just to go to the supermarket because that's what we're allowed to do. But yes, books, reading. So the first thing is the best book that you've read so far this year, and for me that's probably going to be Get a Life, Chloe Brown by Talia Hibbert, which is a romance about Chloe Brown, who has a chronic illness, experiences chronic pain. When Ali is tweeting about having to film this weekend as I'm filming a video. Getting distracted so easily. Haven't been filming much the past few months, and this is what happens. I say this every time, but still. So this is a romance about Chloe Brown who makes a list to get a life, basically to do a bunch of things that she's never done before, and she enlists the help of Red, and if they're romance, there's a lot of good banter. It kind of ends up becoming like friends to lovers, and it was just the most wholesome romance I've ever read while also having that really fun banter. It was making me laugh and that I really enjoyed. So yeah, it was just so sweet, and it's my favorite romance now. As much as it was all about the horror and fantasy last year, this year I've been sucked in by those romances, man. And yeah, this was just really sweet. I know everyone talks about this and how good it is, but like, they're not wrong. Right, next one is best sequel I've read this year. I don't feel like I've actually read very many sequels at all. Other than the fact I've been rereading through a couple of series I read in my childhood, such as Del Toro Quest, so I have really been enjoying that. But in terms of like new to me sequels, pretty much the only ones I feel like I've read are Take a Hint, Danny Brown, which is actually more of a companion novel, and A Court of Silver Flames by Sarah J Maas, which are both not like direct sequels because they're following different characters. But I did really enjoy both of these. So obviously this is a companion novel to Chloe Brown. This is about her sister. I didn't enjoy this as much as Chloe Brown, but it was still a really good romance. And this, the main character, Danny Brown, is a bisexual witch, so also love that. And then A Court of Silver Flames, of course, in the latest, that's kind of a spin-off of A Court of Thorns and Roses. And again, romance, because this book kind of just gave away with even pretending it was focused on the fantasy and it was all about the smutty romance. But I particularly loved the friendships in this. The reason that I loved this book so much really was the friendships, and those strong friendships was just, they were getting to me. I almost cried at one point because of some of the things that were happening and the way the friends were coming to stand by each other. And yeah, so I did really enjoy both of these. The next one is new release you haven't read yet but want to, which when I wrote this list I actually wrote, which it's behind me, you can't really see, it's behind here, but the book I wrote down when I made this list was this one, Near the Bone by Christina Henry. But since I wrote that, I have actually read it. So there's lots of things that have come out this year that I'm interested in though. One off the top of my head would be the sequel to Incendiary by Zoraida Cordova. I read Incendiary earlier this year and it was a YA fantasy with rebellion and memory magic and interesting dynamics between characters, and I really enjoyed that, so I am interested in reading the sequel, which I know came out this year. That would be one. Most anticipated second half of the year. My most anticipated is a book that I don't know if I want to publicly speak about anymore, just because I know there's been a lot of controversy around the author, but I really love vampires and I really love one of their other series, so it has been my most anticipated book for the past couple of years because the publish date was pushed back a year. But outside of that, The Gilded Cage by Lynette Noni, which is the sequel to The Prison Healer, which was another YA fantasy I read this year, and I actually wasn't expecting to be that into. I kind of just read it because it was at the school library, and I actually ended up loving The Prison Healer, which is another story with kind of some rebellion elements and things, so that's interesting. Yeah, so I really want to read that, especially since The Prison Healer had a lot of reveals near the end, so it's kind of like, I do really want to get to that. And I don't even know, I feel like it comes out in September, I could be wrong, but yeah, those are definitely both books I'm interested in reading. Next biggest disappointment, I'm probably going to go with The Amber Spyglass. As much as it's not a new book to me, this is the last book in his Dark Materials, which is a children's fantasy series which I did originally read as a child, and I hadn't ever reread them, so I decided to revisit them this year, and I loved Northern Lights. Like, I was surprised by how much I loved and appreciated Northern Lights reading it now as an adult, but the series kind of went downhill for me from there, and it was also interesting for the fact of I remembered a lot of Northern Lights, but I only kind of remembered snippets of the series outside of that. But by the time I got to the last book, I didn't really like it. It kind of went overboard on the religion aspects, and it was trying to do lots of different things at once, kind of going lots of different ways at once, and I just didn't really enjoy it that much. Like, it was still nice to listen to with that, you know, the nice nostalgia undercurrent of it, but especially compared to how much I loved the Northern Lights, this was a disappointment coming out the end of that series. Alright, biggest surprise, I've already mentioned it, but The Prison Healer, just because I didn't actually even have an intention to initially read that book at all. Again, it was just something I picked up because it was there when I needed a book to read, and I ended up loving it. So that was my biggest surprise, which I don't know why I wasn't expecting to like it, because now, I guess I hadn't seen enough about it previously, because it's been compared a lot to Throne of Glass, which I did actually really enjoy the first few Throne of Glass books when I read them many years back. But I don't know if I hadn't seen that comparison before, or why. Just like looking at this book, I don't know, I had no interest and was surprised by how much I liked it, even though, I don't know, maybe I shouldn't have been. But I think also because I don't connect, I was going to say because I don't connect to YA fantasy as much anymore, I find, in general, but then there are a couple of YA fantasies this year particularly that I've read and loved, so who knows? Who knows? It was a surprise. Favorite new author, I don't really like consciously have favorite authors, I feel, but in terms of an author who was new to me, who I've read multiple books from and kind of really enjoyed all of them and will probably read more from the author, it's going to be Talia Hibbert. Yeah, I loved Chloe Brown. I enjoyed the series overall, and I think there's going to be like some kind of spin-off series from that as well, so I will probably read that. So in terms of a new to me author that I enjoyed their books and will probably read more from, there you go. Newest fictional crush, I don't really get those fictional crushes so much anymore, at least not in books. Video games it happens sometimes, but even the video game crushes, like I've been replaying Mass Effect this year. Going off on a tangent away from books, but I did start replaying Mass Effect this year, and Garrus was always my space boyfriend.
Don't be ridiculous. Your investigation is over, Garrus.
Commander Shepard, Garrus Vicarian. I was the officer in charge of the CSEC investigation into Sarah.
It's Garrus! It's Garrus! So there's been that, but no, in terms of books, don't really tend to crush on book characters. Don't have one for this. Newest favourite character, I wrote down Red and Chloe, just because they're so wholesome and supportive of each other. That is from, of course, Get a Life, Chloe Brown. They're just, yeah, really wholesome, supportive, fun characters. And when I finished that book, I did actually go and make a list of all the reasons I love Chloe, all the reasons I love Red, and I posted that on Twitter. Yeah, they just... A book that made you cry. I don't usually really have a genuine answer for this, but I do this year, and that is A Monster Calls by Patrick Ness, because I cannot handle anything that is to do with saying goodbye to parents because of my own personal issues. But yeah, it's a book that mostly explores a boy having to come to terms with saying goodbye to his mother, and so that did get me, and I did have, it wasn't like a full-on cry, but there were definitely the tears in my eyes, you know? A book that made you happy. I'm gonna be real repetitive here. Like, I have read a number of books I really liked, but in terms of the one that gave me those really kind of warm and fuzzy feelings, it is gonna be Get a Life, Chloe Brown. Like, just wholesome, supportive romance. It is the book I've read that has given me the warmest feelings because of that, you know? So... Most beautiful book that you've acquired this year, I'm probably going to go with A Pinch of Magic. I love these covers so much. I also have the second book. I want to get the third book. These covers are stunning. This is a middle grade fantasy series following three sisters who find out they're cursed, and there is a little pinch of magic in the story. And yeah, I also have enjoyed what I've read of this series so far, which is the second and third book. I haven't read the first one yet, but like, they're just really pretty. Real pretty. Book you need to read by the end of the year. I'm not someone who even tends to like set TBRs. I don't really restrict my reading in that way, so I generally don't have books where I'm like, yeah, I have to read that. The one thing I would have for this is I am currently reading an arc through NetGalley, so I do need to finish that. And that is for a book by TJ Klune, which I can't remember the exact name of. It's something to do with Whispering Door, but it's following this man who was kind of awful in his life, but he's just died and he's kind of navigating that area just after death before he's kind of accepting that he has to move on. And it's actually the first thing I've ever read by the author as well. I know a lot of people, I know there was a book like last year that everyone was talking about, but I've never read anything by the author. I'm finding it interesting so far, and I do need to finish that because it is an arc. Favorite book to movie adaptation you've seen this year? Okay, the only thing I had written down was that I rewatched It, because It 2017 is one of my favorite movies of all time, really, especially one of my favorite horror movies, and I would recommend watching it over reading the book because I have very mixed feelings about the book. I've talked about it before, but there are just some things in it that make me so uncomfortable, and it's very long, and I think you could watch the movies and be fine. One of the few cases of watch the movies, don't read the book. I mean, you can if you want to, but I wouldn't necessarily recommend it. But yeah, because I don't know whether I couldn't consciously think of many movies that I'd watch that I know were based on books outside of that. So, I mean, this week we've watched movies that were based on books, because they were based on books by, I think, R.L. Stine. We watched the Fear Street movies this week and really enjoyed those. We watched all three this week. It was a good time. But I didn't read them, I didn't watch them in the first half of the year, but there's a special mention. And I think that's actually it. And then I was just gonna say some honorable mentions to some other books that I have particularly enjoyed this year that didn't come up in those questions. So Vision, which was a comic I read the first volume of, which is Vision and his creepy android family in a living a suburban life. I found that interesting. Incendiary, which I did actually end up mentioning because I had to change one of the answers. And I can't read my own writing. I know what it's meant to say, but it doesn't look like it says that. But The Rage of Dragons by Evan Winter was another fantasy that I really enjoyed. That one's an adult fantasy. It's kind of a revenge story, but it was just very fast paced, and it's quite a large book, but because of how fast paced it was, I was like fully engaged the whole time, so I really enjoyed that. And the one book that I read, that I believe I did read before the end of June, that I hadn't written down because I wrote this earlier. And then the one book I hadn't written down that I also really enjoyed was Ace of Spades. So those are some honorable mentions of other books I particularly enjoyed in the first half of the year. I've mentioned before that there are some books I've really enjoyed this year, but overall I feel like majority of the books I've read, since I have read freaking 48, I do feel like a majority of those I felt fairly lukewarm about. Like mostly they were either okay or didn't really like that so much. So I haven't had a fantastic reading year in that respect, although obviously I have mentioned a bunch of books today that I did really enjoy, but that's kind of how I've felt about the year, which, I don't know, I feel like it's getting better. I've been reading more things I've been enjoying since then. Like I'm currently reading, what did I just start reading? I'm currently reading that arc. I'm currently reading, what's it called? My Best Friend's Exorcism by Grady Hendrix. I started reading that recently. And the other thing I've been listening to the past couple of days is, what is it called? Nope, I have no idea what it's called, but it's a book in the Wicked Villains series, the one that follows Hook and Tink. And again, I'm just laughing because I can't talk about smutty books without laughing, but I'm actually enjoying that one so much more than Learn My Lesson, because I actually like the characters, for one, because I really didn't like Hades, but it's also just a much more kind of supportive romance in a lot of ways, and they're kind of like exploring past trauma and stuff, so I'm actually really enjoying that, even like outside of the smut element. Yeah, I'm enjoying the characters and everything of that, and like Tink's plus size 5'2". There was a line that was like, I mean this isn't relevant to my first half of the year of reading, but there was a line where it was like, I'm 5'2", but I'm pixie size or something. I'm like, I'm about 5'2". Does that mean I'm a pixie? Yeah, I feel like possibly the reading's going uphill. But yeah, if you've done this tag, do let me know down below. I always enjoy watching these. I've been in watching some because I know most people do it before the end of because I know most people seem to do it before the first half of the year ends, but I always insist that no, I'm going to do it once that's actually passed. Yeah, let me know if you've done this tag. Let me know what you think of the books I've talked about today. Let me know if you have any recommendations, or just leave an emoji or say hi, and let's chat in the comments. But I love the black lipstick marks. Otherwise, yeah, I think that's gonna be all from me today. Goodbye from me and from my little sibling's mug that is kept at my house. Not that they've been allowed over much in the past year, because we keep going into lockdown. I have loopy lockdown brain. I think it's gonna be extended too. It's looking that way, so stay safe, stay educated. Starzy out.